tell me there was danger? Why didn't you warn me? Ladies know what to guard against because they read novels that tell them of these tricks.
That's a quote from Tess of the Durga House.
Anastasia Steele is a 21-year-old literature student from Washington State University, Vancouver, and she lives with her roommate Catherine Kavanaugh, who is a journalism student and an editor with a college newspaper. Kate has an interview scheduled with 27-year-old billionaire Christian Grey. On the fateful day, she falls sick and has to request Anna to take her place. Anastasia arrives at the Grey house to interview him, and there are immediate sparks. She trips and falls, and Christian is captivated by her despite her clumsiness. As the interview progresses, he finds himself more and more captivated by her. After she leaves, he finds himself obsessing about her. She, too, can't stop thinking about him. Even though he's clearly attracted to her, he's conflicted about bringing her into his world because he is into BDSM, and she's clearly naive of this sort of arrangement. After some back and forth, he introduces her to his red room, where he reveals himself to be a dominant and proposes that she sign a contract for 3 months and live with him as a submissive over the weekends. As a part of this contract, she will have to eat, sleep, and dress as per his instructions. He wants full control of all her activities for such time as the contract covers. Anna hesitates because she doesn't know much about this lifestyle. She's just in love with this young, successful billionaire. She wants him, but not the contractual BDSM lifestyle. He makes it clear that this is the only type of relationship that he wants. But because she likes him and wants to be in a relationship with him, despite her initial reluctance, she agrees to this arrangement. As time goes on, she finds herself increasingly distressed because she just wants a regular relationship. Christian is unable to release his need for control. Anastasia, at the end of the first book, wants to know how bad it can get so that she can have an idea of what it is that she's getting herself into with this arrangement. She wants to know how harsh the punishment can get if she messes up in one way or another. He belts her 6 times, and at the end of this, she is horrified at the extent to which he wishes to inflict physical pain on her. She realizes that he's not just a dominant, but a sadist. She taps out of the whole arrangement, and a separation period of about 3 to 4 days follows. During this time, Christian finds himself deeply regretting his actions, and he wants to get her back. He talks to his therapist, John Flynn, and he suggests that Christian should try having a regular relationship the way that Anna wants it to be. In an attempt to rekindle his relationship with Anastasia, he offers to drive her to Jose's art event. After the show, he takes her out for dinner and offers a relationship on her terms. No punishments, no rules.
You're open to new terms,
No rules. No punishments.
but you need all those things.
I need you more.
You related some experiences you had with a priest who was twice your age, right?
I think he was a little older than that, actually. I thought that he was younger than he was at the time, and subsequently found out he was perhaps 10 years older than I thought he was.
He was someone who was in a position of authority, and that what he did with you was something that he shouldn't have done. The first thing that struck me about the way that you formulated it was your refusal to play victim.
I didn't see myself as one.
I know that. And that actually struck me as rather admirable, because you came forward and said, this is an uncomfortable truth, but, I was of sufficient age to have a mind of my own, and this was something I was pursuing of my own volition. And then
It is how I felt at the time. And
when you think about yourself as a 14-year-old, you think about that 14-year-old as yourself. You don't necessarily think about that 14-year-old as a 14-year-old. And, when you remember your 14-year-old self, and then you go out and you see some 14-year-olds, it's actually quite a shock, or it can be quite a shock, because 14-year-olds are often a lot younger and a lot more clueless
then you remember
than you remember yourself being.
I think I know where you're going with this.
It isn't obvious to me that even if you were a willing participant in what happened to you, when you were 14, that justifies what happened to you on the part of the person with whom you were participating?
Well, no, of course it doesn't. But the way I apprehended it was that it was me.
Right.
And when I said a moment ago, I think I know where you're going with this. I can interject with a very small data point that I think explains how I think about this after some time and reflection, which is I have something now that I didn't have in 2017, which is a relationship with my stepson. And he is 16. And when I think, let's not finish that thought, but when I consider how old he is and put myself at that age, suddenly the horror that I see in everybody else's faces that I have never felt myself about what happened to me, and therefore has never been communicated from me, a sort of acknowledgement and awareness that this is not normal, and that this is a horrifying and terrible thing to happen to a small person. I never apprehended it like that because I just thought of that 14-year-old as me today.
Right.
Now I'm experiencing getting to know a child as a co-parent, as a stepmom, and now I get it.
Okay. So,
now
okay.
I get it.
All right. So, I've seen this with my clinical clients, who failed to notice in some important way that the person they were sometimes decades ago is not the person they are now. And the memories they have from those times, which are appropriate to those times, are not the same memories that are appropriate to those times now, given their relative maturation.
There is also perhaps a proper place for victimhood when you are in fact actually a victim.
Right.
And I think that now I perhaps realize that I was one. I look at somebody I care about who is 2 years older even, and the thought of me at that age and someone taking advantage, suddenly I get it. I'm like, I would kill the guy. I would walk over there, I would shoot him in the head. Like, I get it now.
In the second novel of the trilogy, the main issues dealt with are Anna's immersion into Christian's world and his past colliding with his present. The first point of conflict is the return of Leela, one of his ex-submissives. So with this girl, she all of a sudden appears in front of his housekeeper and slashes her wrists when Christian is away with Anna. Christian receives a phone call where he's informed by his housekeeper that Leela came there and she tried to self-exit. Apparently, she was married to another man, but that marriage did not work out very well. She then fell in love with another man who bears a lot of similarities with Christian, and he also loved her sincerely. But because of a freak accident, he passes away. And this leads to Leela's complete nervous breakdown. She winds up at Christian's place. Much of this novel revolves around Christian and Anna's fear of danger from Leela. They beef up their security and keep a search on for her. Finally, she is found, and then she's sent off to Christian's therapist, Dr. Flynn. Christian takes care of her mental health with Dr. Flynn and also arranges for art classes for her so that she can get back on her feet and find her life again. The second point of conflict is Mrs. Elena Lincoln, one of his mother's friends who introduced him to the BDSM lifestyle when he was 15 years old. She is a child abuser who, ironically, according to Christian, had a very positive impact on him. He was her submissive for 6 years. He was a problematic child and got into fights and got expelled from his schools regularly. But engaging with Elena allows him to calm him down and focus his energies into becoming a successful entrepreneur. He drops out from Harvard in the second year and gets into investment. Elena provides him with a loan of 100 grand to start his own business. So even though she did take advantage of a minor, she helped him to become the man that he is today. Because of the positive influence that she had on him, Christian is unable to see the ways in which Elena stole his childhood. His parents, Gary Gray and Grace Gray, find out that Elena had been sexually exploiting their adopted son when he was a child. And of course, they are absolutely livid at the betrayal. Christian is not able to see why everyone is losing their minds. He sees it as a consensual relationship rather than as CSA. He keeps insisting to Anna, Grace, and Garrick that this was a beneficial arrangement and completely consensual, even though all three of them are utterly repulsed by Elena. Second book in its entirety involves resolution of his situation with Leela and the ending of his relationship with Elena. Christian becomes more and more emotionally involved with Anna. He asks her to move in and eventually asks her to marry him. He also has a near fatal helicopter crash orchestrated by Anna's boss, Jack Hyde. In the final book of the trilogy, Christian is looking forward to his married life with Anna. He decides to build a new house for them. He does this with the help of the architect Gia Mateo and his brother Elliot. Anna and Christian have their honeymoon. Anna's father meets with an accident. Anna then finds out that she is pregnant. Jack Hyde gets out on bail. He creates more problems for Christian by kidnapping his little sister Mia and demanding a ransom of $5 million. There is a reason why Jack Hyde is so antagonistic towards Christian. We need to go back to his backstory a little bit for this. Christian's birth mother becomes a single mother at the age of 19. Unfortunately, she finds herself trapped with a pimp who regularly beats her and sells her body for money. She finds herself helpless and unable to protect her son. She becomes addicted to drugs to cope with the circumstances. She only finds release in death. Christian is left alone with her dead body for 4 days. He's left there scared and hungry. Her pimp discovers her body and then brings a policewoman around. Christian and his mother are taken to a hospital. That is where Grace Gray, a doctor, sets her eyes upon him for the first time and immediately falls in love with this child. She decides to adopt him. But before they can adopt him, he's placed in a foster home for about a couple of months. Collins are the ones who take care of these kids before they're adopted. One other child there is Jack Hyde. Jack Hyde nurses a resentment that Christian got adopted while he himself did not. And because of his adoption, he got to see a much better life. Carrie Gray and Grace Gray provide Christian with a wholesome life, but are unable to control him as he gets into his teen years. This is where his encounter with Elena allows him to calm down. In the present time, Christian comes to terms with his trauma and gets ready to become a father himself. He regrets his initial reaction to Anna's announcement of pregnancy and vows to be a good husband and father. They then live happily ever after. Christian finds his present actions affected by his past trauma. There are 3 events that are deeply traumatic to him. First is his mother leaving him. Second is Elena leaving him. And third is Anna almost leaving him. His mother is beaten and pimped out by a man regularly until he's 4 years of age. The pimp also beats Christian and burns him with his cigarettes. This is the reason why he cannot be touched. He's locked in a closet by his mother more than once so that she can protect him from the pimp. As an adult, he's unable to lock the door in a room if he's alone. Eventually, he has to witness his mother's loss and finds himself hungry, deeply hungry, for 4 days, not knowing whether that hunger will come to an end or not. As a result, as an adult, when he's wealthy, he is philanthropic and wants to erase world hunger. That's why he keeps instructing Anna to eat. Elena and Christian are discovered by her husband Lincoln during one of their intimate sessions. He beats Christian and Elena. With that, he loses Elena also from his life. After this incident, he was never a submissive and only a dominant so that he can have full control over all events. Christian almost loses Anna when he finds him next to Jack Hyde. When she's recovering from her injuries, he stays right next to Anna for days until she regains consciousness. Seeing her struggling for her life and possible loss of his unborn child causes significant distress to him. It takes him right back to the loss of his mother and Elena. The first two incidents made him feel out of control, and he found himself victimized. This fuels his excessive need for control. He becomes a dominant and only has contractual relationships with women where he is in full control of the outcomes. There are no surprises, no disasters, and no emotional damage. When he meets Anna, everything is out of his control, no matter how much he tries. He unexpectedly meets her at the interview. He finds that she challenges him at every turn, during the interview, as well as later on when they're in a relationship. Here are some ways in which she surprises him and he finds himself out of control, but continues to fall in love with her. She's a virgin and waiting to fall in love, unlike all of his previous submissives who were trained in this lifestyle. The only similarity between them was they all looked like his mother. When she experiences the full strength of his punishment, she is horrified by his sadism and has the strength to walk away from him. He's impressed by her strength to stay away from him. He's the one to become obsessed with her and starts to circle her apartment in hopes of getting together with her. During the relationship, Anna keeps insisting that she wants more. She wants more of a regular relationship, just like many of his previous submissives. But while he was able to turn them down, he finds that with Anna, he's falling deeper and deeper in love with her. He gives up his BDSM lifestyle for her. He gets rid of some very expensive canes that he had specially made because Anna doesn't like to be caned. He only reintroduces kink into their relationship when Anna herself insists. Anna refuses to include the word obey in her vows, stating that as a free individual, she is not obligated to obey anybody. She says that they can discuss issues as and when they come about and resolve them like adults. But she will not obey him. She is not one of his submissives and will not completely give herself up to him like they did. This causes him untold misery, and he wonders if he should even get married to her since she won't do the one thing that he's asked of her. His therapist Flynn advises that he compromise and see things the way Anna does. He eventually relents and agrees that Anna doesn't have to obey him. The logic behind this is that whenever he has not been in control, disasters have unfolded before him. And to prevent any of those disasters, he wants complete submission from her. After marriage, Anna doesn't want to take up his name. He is furious that she won't do it. This time he does get his way, but through the generous gift of making her the CEO of Grey Publishing, where currently she is just an employee. She agrees to change her name to Anastasia Gray. Christian acts petulantly when she reveals her pregnancy. But that is also because he was only now getting used to the role of a husband. He wasn't sure he was ready to be a father. When he leaves Anna after a fight, he tries to call up Flynn, but Flynn is unavailable. So his feet subconsciously carry him to Elena's parlor. I suppose this was a way for him to resolve the loss of his childhood. When he sits down to have a conversation with Elena, he realizes that he has completely moved on from her. He turns down her advances and goes back to Anna. When he returns, Anna puts him to sleep. She discovers Elena's texts and is furious that he went to her. Later, she gives him a dressing down that he's acting immaturely to the news of his child's arrival. She says that if she had to choose between the child and him, she would choose the child, just as his mother should have chosen him. This shakes him out of his confusion about fatherhood. He realizes that Anna is right and that he needs to embrace the changes and go with the flow rather than swimming against the tide. Anna's insistence that she wants more from him allows him to grow out of his secluded BDSM lifestyle and find family and an emotionally fulfilling future. Here, Anna is able to help Christian overcome his limitation of needing control over others. In this story, much like a lot of problematic romances doing the rounds, the female protagonist is able to heal the male rogue and set him on the right path. But why does this formula work? Why does a man need a woman to become better? Can't he just become better all on his own? Archetypical narratives of good versus evil have resonated with people across ages and cultures. These stories are the ones that have lasted the longest in our memories. Some that come to mind are David and Goliath, Batman and Joker, Harry Potter and Voldemort, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Vikram and Betal. There's an eternal battle between order and chaos, starting from the biblical Adam and Eve, where they are seduced by Satan to taste the forbidden fruit, leading to their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. In our own lives, we may have witnessed that good does not always triumph over evil. There are so many times where evil seems to be winning over good. However, in our collective conscious, we have a sense that eventually good does triumph over evil, if only we try. There's a sense of justice associated with it that tugs at our senses and makes us gravitate towards such stories over and over again. When chaos seems to be all consuming, we try to bring order to it by setting up for ourselves an ideal, that perfect world that we can aspire to. This utopia, this imagined reality, is something that we have our eye on, constantly trying to reach it, even if perfection seems elusive. Thomas More presents to us Utopia, a perfect world where people work well with each other and are happy. Underlying philosophy of utopia is Epicureanism, which espouses living a life free from needless fear of death and the gods. It is characterized by religious skepticism and a general attack on superstition and divine intervention. Its ultimate goal is to live a life of pleasure, which comes when one lives free from anxiety and mental pain. Epicureanism means a devotion to pleasure, comfort, and high living. In opposition to this is the biblical worldview, which views mankind as fallen and the world at large as chaotic, but capable of redemption through dedication to God's will. This worldview runs in stark contrast to the Epicurean view of individual pursuit of pleasure. Cultivating the Garden of Eden and expanding it beyond its walls so as to control the chaos remains its central tenet. In problematic romances like the 50 Shades series, the heroine takes on the work of Lord Jesus. Meanwhile, the rogue hero is an Epicurean who needs to be set right. He, like Satan in Paradise Lost, seduces and torments the pure and virginal heroine. The heroine, like Jesus in Paradise Regained, pushes against his misguided ways and challenges him to follow the right path. In 50 Shades, Anastasia questions Christian's ways and opens the door to his introspection. He is forced to come to terms with his abuse and abandonment as a child so that he can heal from those wounds and stop needing this excessive sense of control as an adult. On this journey of redemption, Elena Lincoln is an Epicurean who has given herself to pleasure. She is an obstacle for Christian to contend with, a relic from his past that threatens to drag him back to where he came from. She doesn't believe that Christian's soul can be saved. With Anna's help, Christian crosses over to the light. He's such a complicated person. And now I have an insight as to why. A young man deprived of his adolescence, sexually abused by some evil Mrs. Robinson figure. No wonder he's old before his time. My heart fills with sadness at the thought of what he must have been through. Here, James subverts Eve's temptation to disobedience. And as opposed to biblical representations, Anna is the one to redeem Christian instead of causing his downfall. In a world created by a woman, a man finds himself deeply affected by the presence and absence of women in his life. It is women who become instrumental in his downfall, and then it is women who then save him from this fall. James isn't the only author to have done so. Thai author Krishna Asokishan wrote the novel Savan Byang in the year 1970. The title Savan Byang translates into Paradise Diversion. It has been made into a TV series multiple times. The most recent, which is the 2008 version, features Ken as Kavi, the male protagonist, and Anne as Naren, the female protagonist. The story revolves around the rich and spoiled Kavi Voravad, who is really angry with his father for marrying multiple times after his mother's death. Although Kavi is blessed with material comforts, he yearns for his father's undivided attention and resents his new wives. Leela, one of his classmates from school, had a crush on him when they both studied together. He cruelly rejects her. Nursing a wounded female pride, she moves on. Years later, Leela gets engaged to someone else. While in a car with her fiancé, she meets with an accident caused by Kavi's father. Her fiancé passes away. Kavi's father meets Leela at the hospital and ends up eventually falling in love with her. He proposes and she accepts his marriage proposal. Once married, Leela moves in her mother, her sister Naren, and her brother into Kavi's palatial house. Kavi is enraged that he has to share his roof with all of these people and creates conflict so that they would leave. Kavi and Leela both butt heads constantly since they are both stubborn, manipulative, and aggressive. Kavi senses that Leela is slightly jealous and competitive when it comes to Naren. Just to irritate Leela, he starts making comparisons between her and Naren, telling her that he finds Naren more attractive than her. Meanwhile, he genuinely starts feeling attracted towards Naren since, unlike Leela, Naren is well mannered, caring, and sincere. He starts bullying and harassing Naren, initially to irritate Leela, but eventually because he wants to get closer to her. His harassment of Naren escalates slowly. It starts with verbal harassment and slight threats, and then moves on to physically violating her space to eventually physically slapping her. There's this escalating cycle of violence between Kavi and Leela, which starts to impact the people around them. There is one major blowout fight between Kavi and Leela. Here, she pretends that Kavi has physically assaulted her and yells and screams so that everybody in the family comes running. In front of his father, she pretends that he has beaten on her and starts crying. His father takes Leela's side and erroneously punishes Kavi. Kavi is furious and distressed and, in a fit of anger, leaves the place. On his way out, he sees Naren returning from work. In his heightened emotional state, Kavi kidnaps Naren and takes him to one of his beach houses. Here, he keeps her for 3 days. Here, he not only physically and verbally abuses her, but also essays her. For 3 days, their family is searching for Naren. Although they suspect that Kavi might have something to do with her disappearance, they are unable to conclusively connect the two. Upon their return, Kavi's abuse of Naren continues. Kavi's father is able to sense that he is harassing Naren. Talking to Kavi to stop harassing her does not help matters. To punish Kavi, he changes his will such that after him, he will have to share his wealth with Leela's family. Because of all of the stress in their life, Kavi's father passes away. Kavi, after the loss of his father, becomes less of a raging asshole and slowly starts the trajectory of character growth. He is frustrated by the revelations of his father's will, but reluctantly accepts his fate. Meanwhile, Naren realizes that she can no longer put up with Kavi's presence, and so she leaves his house and starts living alone. There she discovers that she's pregnant with Kavi's child. Once he finds out that she is pregnant, he wants to take responsibility for her and their future child. The traumatized Naren is repulsed by Kavi and keeps running away from him. The final chapter of the story is spent with Kavi groveling to get Naren back. He does everything that he can to get her forgiveness and to get her to come back to him. After a lot of effort on his part, she accepts his love and they live happily ever after. Here, crucial is the letter that Kavi's father leaves for Leela, explaining that she needs to see Kavi as a child who is deprived of love. He strongly believes that love is the one thing that can help Kavi, and that Naren, with her purity, will be the right partner for him. Here again, like Anastasia, who constantly challenges Christian's lifestyle and brings out the family man in him, Naren continues to question Kavi and makes him reconsider his worldview. Despite his cynicism and bitterness, Kavi finds himself falling in love with Naren because of her sincerity and honesty. This recurrent theme of the female protagonist taming the rogue hero is seen across cultures. These stories are written by women for women. The authors writing these stories and the readers consuming them are both clearly very well educated. So, why do women write and read novels where the rogue hero is reformed and becomes a family man and lives happily ever after despite his many sins? By constructing such narratives, the authors are displaying a realization that the world we live in is skewed in favor of male power, and that women are often heavily penalized and at the receiving end of their aggression. In real life, abusive men don't change unless they want to. The man doesn't always repent and come back to claim the girl he essayed and impregnated. The abuser doesn't suddenly stop abusing their victim just because they have fallen in love with them or suddenly care about their well being. In fact, the abuse often escalates and keeps continuing in cycles. Lundy Bancroft, in his book, Why Does He Do That?, says about abusers, counseling abusive men is difficult work. They are usually very reluctant to face up to the damage that they have been causing women, and often children as well, and hold on tightly to their excuses in victim blaming. They become attached to the various privileges they earn through mistreating their partners, and they have habits of mind that make it difficult for them to imagine being in a respectful and equal relationship with a woman. The abuser would like us to accept the following simple but erroneous formula: feelings cause behavior. Although our feelings can influence how we wish to act, our choices of how to behave are ultimately determined more by our attitudes and our habits. We respond to our emotional wounds based on what we believe about ourselves, how we think about the person who has hurt us, and how we perceive the world. The disrespect that abusive men so often direct toward women in general tends to be born of their cultural values and conditioning rather than personal experiences of being victimized by women. Writing these novels allows these authors a sense of resetting the scales of justice, where in the battle of good and evil, despite the brute force of evil, it is good that triumphs. The Epicurean excess is pushed back, and the biblical Garden of Eden is restored. By watching Kavi go from an aggressive and abusive bully to a man groveling for the love of this girl, wrongs are righted. Fictionally, good triumphs over evil, where in real life, wealthy and powerful men are not called into account for their crimes against women. By watching Christian fall in love with Anna to such an extent that he is willing to give up his BDSM lifestyle, his fear of intimacy, and even all of his hard earned wealth We as audience attain catharsis for the real life experiences of women, where most of us do not get to experience this depth of love, passion, and devotion from the men in our lives who have wronged us. Catharsis, purification or purgation of emotions, such as pity and fear, primarily through art. Through experiencing fear vicariously in a controlled situation, the spectator's own anxieties are directed outward, and through sympathetic identification with the tragic protagonist, they're able to find an outlet and expression for their desire of order reigning over chaos. Women who consume such media are, in fact, drawn in by love defeating the forces of destruction. It is not the violence against women that is attractive. Anna loves the talented, successful, handsome, and brilliant Christian Grey, and she does not want to be beaten up. She loves the potential in him to be a husband, a father, a warrior, a builder, a priest, and a king. She cannot understand his need for control and wishes to rid him of it. She understands that his traumas have become his kinks. He releases his painful memories by reliving them in a controlled environment, much like the readers of these problematic romances. In Savanbyang, Kavi does everything in his power to prove to Naren that he is in love with her. He learns how to cook her favorite meals. He does not let her do any hard work that will strain her. He's there to take care of her every need. He's even willing to give up his entire wealth to Naren and his child if it means that she'll come back home. After all of that repeated effort, Naren forgives him. Kavi is redeemed, and he becomes a husband, a father, a warrior, a builder, a priest, and a king. Ironically, it is by taking on a servant attitude that he becomes a king, much like Christian. While it is true that the focus seems to be on the female experience, these stories also call upon a true expression of manhood. The male protagonist has to look into himself and find his purpose as a man. US Senator Josh Hawley, in his book Manhood, Masculine Virtues America Needs, identifies the ways in which men can find themselves again when they are adrift. Each man is appointed to bring forth creation's possibilities, to help perfect the world and build it into what it could be. That work begins with his own soul. Adam's story is a grand narrative of chaos and order, light and darkness, an origin story. And from it, we learn the origins of man's purpose. Hawley's primary message is that men can become whole again and find meaning in their lives by moving away from an Epicurean pursuit of pleasure to a mindset of serving others through self sacrifice. He starts from the biblical project of God's Garden of Eden. Adam fails God by getting tempted by Satan. The task of expanding the horizons of Eden remained incomplete. Evil triumphed over God's creation. This needs to be set right. The Bible has much to say about evil and much more to say about a man's duty to confront it in himself above all. Man's commission to subdue the earth's chaos and bring forth its potential means confronting the evil the chaos conceals. And that begins with himself. The battle with evil is proving ground of a man's character. Genesis is direct about this. To build the world into a temple, he must stand in evil's way, starting in his soul. That is the truth today's men need to hear. Men everywhere, he suggests, should take up this mantle and continue God's work through serving others. A man devoted to himself is not a man at all, he says. What Andrew Tate appears to prize above all is just what the Epicureans say he should: the ability to do whatever he wants. As a husband, a man needs to stand by his vow to commit to another, body and soul. As a father, a man needs to embrace feeling imperfect and out of control when raising his kids. Fatherhood is the work of sacrificing the now for the sake of the future. As a warrior, a man is called upon to embrace courage that runs contrary to the instinct of self preservation. Preserving life is not always found in avoiding conflict. Sometimes he must stand between danger and civilization and give his life to enable others' lives to go on. Courage is in making the choice to drive the darkness out. As a builder, each man is called upon to cultivate a little Eden. Through resourcefulness and hard work, he is to carry on God's mission for man and make the world into a temple. The anthropologist David Gilmour concluded that the critical threshold marking the passage from boyhood to manhood was the point at which the boy produces more than he consumes and gives more than he takes. As a priest, he brings God's message into the world through his actions and thus makes it a temple. Modern Epicurean liberalism is fundamentally atheistic, after the pattern of Epicurus himself, who rejected the relevance of gods. In his place, today's liberals offer a woke religion that demands we renounce manhood, womanhood, Christianity, and other supposed markers of social power, and submit to the corrective tutelage of the liberal elite. Today's liberals seek to fashion a new sort of person, one beyond male and female, beyond God, who lives to satisfy desire and consume plenty of things, but knows no ultimate purpose in life. The atheistic project promises individual liberty, but what it has in fact delivered is isolation, despair, and a new social hierarchy based on education and income. In short, liberal atheism has been a failure. The world still needs God, which means it still needs men with the character of priests. As a king, a man exercises dominion by serving God and the people in his life, not himself. A boy becomes a man by taking an adventure into darkness and chaos, to extend the light and build the garden, an adventure toward character. In problematic romances, the tension between good and evil seeks to resolve itself throughout the narrative by the male protagonist becoming more of a man. But are these stories just a one sided victory of good over evil, or is there more to it than that? Heroes soldier on, not because they are fatalists, content to be mere pawns of chance, nor because they are nihilists, believing all to be meaningless. They soldier on because they believe right will prevail, and they believe their lives can make a difference in making it so. While it is true that Christian overcomes his fears and finds himself with Anna, Anna also grows and evolves as her relationship with Christian strengthens. Not only is her social status elevated, she also becomes more confident and assertive through her experiences with Christian. By helping him overcome his problem areas, she finds her own strengths. She explores the world of BDSM. Despite much anguish over longevity of Christian's affections for her, she finds the courage to sacrifice her own well-being and that of her unborn child for Christian and his family. From a naive girl who interviews Christian, she's called upon a heroic act to save his family, and she shows up. Kavi essays and impregnates Naren. But Naren shows fortitude in walking away from him and sets off on her own hero's journey. She leaves his palatial home and rents her own house. She's willing to work hard and raise her own child as a single mother. She's not bitter and resentful that she's going to become an unwed mother, even though she does feel sad about it. She embraces motherhood with hope and optimism. She declines Tom's offer to marry her and help her raise Kavi's child. She's not looking for male validation and support. Kavi has great wealth and power, and yet none of her strength. He is blown away by her resilience, inner equilibrium, lack of anger, and bitterness. Kavi is easily angered by circumstances when they don't go his way. He is deeply resentful of his father's constant need for female companionship and feels deprived of his love. He externalizes his pain and lashes out at people around him. Naren models to him that there are other ways of handling situations that don't go your way, that you can meet life with hope, that tomorrow can be better if only we try. In all of these romances, there is growth in both the male and the female protagonists by virtue of contending with each other's opposing natures. It is true that the woman mellows the man. However, the female too, by osmosis, becomes stronger, more assertive, and resolute in the face of opposition. She's not merely a helpless pawn, she has agency. And despite being victimized by a powerful man, in some measure, she has chosen this battle. She is filled with love, hope, and optimism. She knows that if she soldiers on the right path, she will be able to get out of the whirlpool of chaos. On the surface, she seems to be swept by forces beyond her. But soon there is a reversal of fortune, and by the end of the tale, she has the upper hand. She is topping from the bottom. These heroines win because they continue to hold on to hope for a better tomorrow in the face of grim realities. And in the end, they are justly rewarded. When their ideals are tested in real time, they don't give in to despair. They retain internal strength and independence of thought, despite the odds being stacked against them. This internal fortitude is an emotional state that pushes them to exercise their logical side and overcome the hardships that they're facing. In the war between logic and emotion, it is not the victory of one over another. Rather, it is a blending together of two necessary aspects, the yin and the yang. It is not the victory of female over male. It is the journey of the coming together of the two and finding harmony. Epicurean pleasure seeking, when moderated by a sense of responsibility towards others, becomes sweeter still. Christian and Anna complete and complement each other. Anna becomes more of herself by pushing her own boundaries and exploring new worlds with Christian. Christian attains manhood by letting go of his insecurities and becoming a husband and a father. Kavi's personal disappointments and rage are eroded by the example that Naren sets, and he is able to believe that true love exists. Christian and Kavi are redeemed by love, and both of them set off on an adventure to become a father, a husband, a warrior, a priest, and a king. In Milton's Paradise Regained, Jesus analyzes and refutes Satan's arguments through an interplay of faith and reason in a series of debates. Anna and Naren's puncturing a hole in the worldviews of Christian and Kavi through constant dialogue may be seen as reflecting the internal dialogue we often have with ourselves. When there is a war between logic and emotion, we don't need to choose one over the other. The world is a place for both. Logic buttresses the emotional ideal with logical steps to its realization. What seems delusional, the audacious belief in a better tomorrow, and a hope that we can do better, need not be dimmed in the light of reality of the present moment. One can always try to improve in what we have by using logical means to acknowledge the reality and then find solutions to what seems irreparable. It always seems impossible until it's done. A new world, a better world, where manhood finds its true expression, is something that women dream of and write about. This imagined reality may seem delusional, but if we aren't even allowed to imagine a different outcome, how can we set forth on completing this mission of God and complete his temple, where men lead by example as husbands, fathers, warriors, priests, and kings?